Hello. Today we're going to be teaching you guys about animal adaptations. Before we get started, my name is Ben, and I'm a part of the Wide Horizons Nature Program and the debate and golf team at MHS.
And my name is Sarah. I'm also part of the Wide Horizons Nature Program, and I'm on the MHS cheer team.
Yeah, so as I said, we're going to be teaching you guys about animal adaptations, and that sounds kind of like a big word, but does anybody want to take a guess at what they think an adaptation maybe is? Okay, and here teachers can pause if they'd like to, and maybe their students would like to discuss. Um, but at this point, we usually go into what we think is a simple definition. An adaptation is really, in the simplest terms, just a change. So it's an animal changing, becoming different. That's what a change is. So why would animals want to change? Okay. So one of the main reasons that animals want to change or do change is to survive. That is kind of the main goal of wild animals in the animal kingdom is survival. And you're going to hear us say that word a few times throughout this presentation, survive. And that is really the entire reason that animals will change or adapt. Okay, so before we move on, there are three types of adaptations. And we're going to get into each a little bit differently. But before we go into that part, it's important to note that adaptations change over time. And then secondly, adaptations or changes are a result to an animal's environment. So does everyone know what an environment is? So an environment's kind of like where an animal lives or their habitat. And so where do camels live? Just think about that. The desert. And where do polar bears live? In the Arctic. And so those are very different habitats or environments. One's very warm and one's very cold. So do you think that a camel and a polar bear will have the same features? No, because they live in different environments. And so animals will adapt or change due to a changing environment. So if we think our environment changes suddenly overnight, do you think that we're all of a sudden going to change like that to our environment? No, it's going to take time because nothing like our bodies cannot change like that. So now moving on to the first type of adaptation, which is called physiological. And that's a really, really big word. Does anybody want to take a guess at what they think that might mean? No? Okay, not too many people do usually. But basically what a physiological change or adaptation is a change in the brain that affects the body. And so if we look at our picture right here, what do we see? We see two different foxes, and those are different foxes, right, Sarah?
Yeah.
Yeah. But actually, what if I told you that they were the same fox? You wouldn't really believe that because they look completely different, right? Right. So basically, it's the same fox, but it changes in the winter to blend in or camouflage. So if we look at the picture on the right, the fox is white. That's because during the winter we know it snows and snow is white, so it wants to blend in. So can anyone think of a reason why an animal would want to blend in? Maybe to hide from a predator, exactly. And so that is a change in that animal's brain. Its brain sends out different chemicals that changes the pigment or the color of that fox's fur in the winter so that it can better survive. And we know that it can better survive because it can hide from predators or maybe hide from prey that it's hunting so that it can catch these there. So now Sarah's going to talk about structural adaptations.
So our next adaptation is structural. And does anybody want to guess what structure is? So structure is like if you guys play with Legos and you build something, like the way you would build it would be its structure. So some examples of this, we'll start with the one we have shown is duck's feet. The feet of the duck have special features on them in between their toes. that's called webbing. And does anybody want to guess what they might have the webbing for? They have it for swimming because they live in a water environment, and so they want to be able to swim well so that they can stay or get away from predators quickly and also get towards their prey quickly because they need to better survive. The next one is giraffes. On one of our first slides, we had a picture of giraffes, and what's a feature about them that's different as shown on the screen? They have those really long necks, and something cool is that giraffes didn't always have really long necks, but they developed them over time because giraffes eat the leaves out of trees, and as trees grew, so did giraffes' necks. They adapted over time so that they could better get their food source and so that they could better survive.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's, okay. So the next type of adaptation that we're going to be talking about is behavioral adaptation. Does anybody want to take a guess at what they think, or maybe think about what a behavior is? So behavior is kind of how an animal acts or the way something acts. So can we think of some different behaviors or actions that maybe animals take or make? So a lot of people like to think about lions, and lions are very mean, right? Same with tigers. So that's kind of, they are predators. And that's actually an adaptation, a behavioral adaptation. They act mean to survive because they can hunt easier, and that just helps them catch more prey. But there's all kinds of different reasons that animals will behave or adapt behaviorally to survive. So if we think about the zoo, has anyone ever been to the zoo and seen those big birds with the big bright wings called peacocks? So what are they doing? Does anybody know why they spread their wings out like that? So one of the reasons that they actually do that is because it makes it look like they have all kinds of little eyes on them, which makes them look bigger. It makes it seem like there's maybe more animals than just that one. And so that peacock acts that way to scare away possible predators. And that's just one way that an animal can act or behave or adapt to behave that helps it survive, so that maybe the predators won't come near it. But again, there are many ways or many reasons that animals will act or behave different ways. And another one of them is mating. So if we think about, there are birds, right? And male birds would like to attract female birds. So do you think a female bird would want to mate with a male bird that's not very athletic or not very strong or not a good partner? No, they wouldn't, because they want to have very good, healthy babies. And so one of the ways that male birds can show that they are a good partner to mate with is they can do that through things such as mating rituals or mating dances, like in this little video right here. So this kind of looks very silly to us, but what this bird is doing is it's just a dance that that species of bird has learned and passes down, and it shows the female bird that it's athletic or that it's a good partner to mate with, so that she will pick him because she wants to have good babies. Okay, so all of these adaptations that we just talked about, physiological, structural, and behavioral, do we all think they happen naturally? Okay, so actually they all happen naturally, and that's because that means they didn't happen without they happened without human input, and they happened by themselves. These animals change to their surroundings by themselves, just because there's always an animal, when it always starts with one maybe, that's born with a favorable trait, and if that trait helps them live, then that trait will get passed on. So if we think, if there were giraffes, like in Sarah's example, that were born with short necks, do you think they would get much food? No, because they wouldn't be able to reach into the trees. So then do you think they would survive very long? No. So then would the trait get passed on? It wouldn't, exactly. But because that trait helps them get food, it helps them survive, then that trait gets passed on because they are able to survive to the mating age. Okay, so like I said, all of these happen naturally, but there's something a little bit differently called artificial selection. Does anybody think they might know what it is? So artificial selection is kind of the opposite of adaptations, because adaptations happen naturally, right, Sarah? So do you kind of want to talk about how artificial selection works?
So artificial selection kind of works by, like, we'll take an example as the one on the screen. You might have heard from other people around you that, like, dogs, their like grandparents or their ancestors is wolves. And that is technically true. Their ancestors are wolves, and we know that because as wolves, we've had, like, say you wanted to get this Dalmatian here on the screen, and you had a wolf born with spots. What you would do is you would, like, mate that wolf to get more wolves with spots, and then you would continue this process to get more and more features of wolves. And you can even do this with, like, other adaptations, like if they're nicer and if they um, have different colors, like all sorts of things. But another cool thing is you can do this with any type of animal. And so our animal that we're going to show is our guinea pig, Casey.
Yeah. And so if we look at Casey, so we can see, oh, dang. Okay, so as I was saying, and as Sarah was saying, these selections can happen, artificial selections can happen with any animals. And she was talking about our example and our animal, which is Casey, the guinea pig, okay? So we're gonna pull up some pictures right here of another animal, which is actually a guinea pig as well. And so if you guys can just look at Casey, and I know it's not as fun because you can't pet her, but just kind of look at Casey and look at the guinea pigs on the screen. And kind of spot some differences in Casey and then the guinea pigs on there. So what are some things we notice about Casey? What color is she, Sarah?
She's white.
Exactly. And what color is the environment or the habitat that the guinea pigs are on the screen?
Brown.
Exactly. So do we think that Casey would blend in very well?
No.
Exactly. And so that's one of the reasons that we can tell that Casey was most likely and looks most likely the way she does through artificial selection and not a natural adaptation. And that's okay because she can be white because she doesn't live out in the wild. And so she doesn't need to hide from things like predators because we take care of her. Whereas the animals on the screen do need to. All right. Well, we're sorry we can't take any questions, and we are hoping that you guys enjoyed our presentation and learned something a little bit about artificial selection and natural adaptations. Thank you.
Thank you.